Can we talk about how grifters online are turning a bunch of Canadians into selfish little toddlers? Maybe that's a little unfair to toddlers. I do want to acknowledge that a lot of vulnerable people are getting screwed by algorithms that hit them with incentivized fire hoses of lies all day long. But it does reach a point where people seem to just be kind of choosing to not care that they live in a society as much as they care about never having to experience a tiny bit of a personal inconvenience. The latest example of this is the tantrums folks are having about not being able to go into the woods because the government is trying to prevent wildfires. I guess I should say trying to prevent more wildfires. To the point that one dude, a former PPC candidate, shocker, has made a point of storming into the woods so that he can get a round of applause from the brainworms in his head and in the heads of many others. Now, I would really love to just roast these losers for the next 5 minutes, but instead I'm gonna tell you how we actually got here and what specific breed of online lie has fueled this. Because the far right and grifter media has been pushing the argument for ages now that climate change is not worsening forest fires. Rather, that a much bigger issue is arson. And if you believe that claim, then you can also believe that something like a woods ban punishes you, a good, responsible, law-abiding, when it suits you, Canadian, for something caused by criminals. Keep the criminals out of the woods, but I should be able to hike. I'm not planning to do any crimes, and how dare you suggest I would? This is government overreach. And that, my friends, is bullshit. Let me explain. Now, like any good rage bait bit of disinformation that preys on those who don't want to think too critically, there's a grain of truth here. Arson is sometimes to blame for some wildfires. But what is actually more accurate to say is that human activities are one of the main causes of wildfires, generally coming after lightning strikes. Human activity, or human caused, can include arson. Though, according to one source I found, arson generally only accounts for between 1 and 4% of human-caused fires annually. But human-caused can also include way more instances of stuff like a stray cigarette butt thrown into the wrong bush, a fire that wasn't adequately put out, or all kinds of accidental things like BC Wildfire Service lists here. And in the background of all of this stuff and cigarettes carelessly thrown, there's also the perfect conditions for wildfires. Like we all know, if you're trying to start a fire in the fireplace, you don't want your wood to be soggy. So the hotter and drier conditions that we deal with as a result of, you guessed it, climate change, are resulting in forests that are much better kindling than they may have otherwise been. Plus, fire season is starting earlier, lasting longer, and those fires are harder to contain. Oh, and did I mention that lightning strikes are becoming more frequent as the climate warms, and wildfires that start that way tend to burn the most area? I'm talking 93% of the area burned in Canada in 2023 was from fires ignited by lightning, and only 7% of that area burned was the result of fires started by human ignition. But anyway, that whole human-caused fire stat is where bad faith actors can play around with wording to downplay climate change and get their viewers all frothed up. But if you think about it a little bit more deeply, you also realize that this narrative, the arson narrative, gives people an enemy that is far more easy to control in their minds than the reality of a changing climate. It's funny because right-wing media keeps drawing a parallel between the COVID lockdowns and this woods ban. But I'd say that where the more accurate parallel lies is in the ways in which right-wing media stirs up people's fears in both situations and prey on an innate human desire to want to have a sense of control in big, scary situations. Like, if we look at the case of COVID, there were people who wanted to believe that the COVID-19 pandemic was an evil plot masterminded by global elites to strip us of all our freedoms. And that narrative gives them a bad guy. It gives them a tangible boogeyman that feels like something that's much more easily controlled and attacked and therefore less scary than reality, which is that we are vulnerable to the whims of nature and disease. And some of the only ways that we can mitigate, not even eliminate that risk, is through big structural actions like getting rid of factory farms, which might mean that you can't consume as much meat or have to pay a lot more money for it. Or maybe have the wealthy and corporations pay more in taxes and direct those funds into our healthcare system, paying doctors and nurses what they actually deserve, especially the nurses and other staff that are so criminally underpaid. Because that would make these systems more robust and they can treat everyone, including the most vulnerable among us. So to summarize, while the right wing likes to tell people that they're huffing copium because they can't deal with reality, the right wing is actually projecting because they don't want to deal with the big, scary, complex problems like climate change and capitalism. So instead, they focus on individual responsibility and individual villains like arsonists and Bill Gates, as if another Bill Gates won't just pop up in his place. And if you believe that disinformation, that individuals behaving badly is what causes wildfires, which I already clarified is largely not the case, that's a very convenient and, for some folks, tempting thing to believe, because it means you don't have to give anything up. You can be totally selfish and self-interested. You don't have to be a team player and do the hard thing like, God forbid, not go into the woods for a week. And when you go into those woods and smoke a dart or don't realize that chains are dragging from your car, because we aren't making the hard societal choices to mitigate climate change, the careless disposal of that dart or the sparks coming off that chain that's dragging means that your neighbor's house is burned to the ground. That's the situation that's more likely than ever because of climate change. We live in a society. It's why you can flush your toilet, you can drink clean tap water, you have roads to drive on, and doctors who will care for you, even if those systems are very imperfect. You can't pick and choose when to enjoy those benefits from living in a society without ever having to be a team player and look out for each other. But unfortunately for all of us, there's a lot of money to be made in telling people that they can do exactly that, and in making up the lies that help to justify that selfishness. Why do you think these right-wing grifters are so popular? It's because they tell you exactly what you want to hear. And that, my friends, is how we end up with dumbasses like this guy. What do you think of all this?